with my first, it was just new. It's your
Yeah.
first baby trying to
Yeah.
breastfeed, and it's like something neither of you really are expert at yet,
Yeah.
especially the mama. It's like you're that time period to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure out the latch. How often do you nurse? Not knowing that in the early stages, there's nursing like sometimes every hour, round the clock,
Right.
up all night, like these things
Yeah.
that people don't speak of that frequently.
Hi, guys. I'm your host, Megan Van Dievender, and this is the Empowerhood Podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. You know, motherhood is hard, and we are going to talk about all of the hard things that just are not talked about enough. So buckle up and enjoy this episode. All right, so let's get started. So hi, Rachel.
Hi, Megan.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thank you so much for being here. I know you're really busy. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yes, I'm excited to do it.
That's
Thank you for
awesome.
having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, everyone out there listening, today we have Rachel Murphy here with us, and she is going to speak with us a little bit about breastfeeding, a lot of the common questions that come along with breastfeeding, and also her incredible monthly support group for breastfeeding Down syndrome babies. So, I am so excited to hear all about this and also ask you, a lot of questions that, are really common with moms, and just the curiosity around breastfeeding, whether moms are breastfeeding right now or, want to breastfeed when they do have a baby. So I know there's lots of questions going to come out today. But before we get into that, Rachel, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and really just like your journey that has brought you to where you are today?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So where should I begin? I think I'll start with my first daughter. She's almost 7 now, and when she was born, that was the beginning of being a mom, right? And
Yeah.
the whole breastfeeding journey. And we actually did have some kind of obstacles there in the beginning, some latch issues, some slow weight gain. And we kept at it. And then she was able to nurse wonderfully. And we went to the local breastfeeding support group. And that's when I really realized this was something I wanted to do. I had been a
Yeah.
nurse since 2010.
Good.
So I feel like it was kind of already something I was interested in, but as far as the breastfeeding portion. And then a couple of years later, I found out that I was pregnant and that my daughter would have not only just Down syndrome, but duodenal atresia, which is actually an intestinal obstruction. So she would need surgery right after birth. And
Okay.
so, of course, I was thinking, oh, how are we going to breastfeed? This is something I really think will help her with the medical things. And I did it with my first daughter. And,
Mm-hmm.
so we went through that journey, which was quite challenging at times, just because of how much she had going on medically, really.
Okay.
But she was able to get to nursing at around 2 months old and nursed for a while. So
Okay.
that will come into play later as far as kind of how we did that probably. And that
Okay.
launched me onto getting my CLC, which is kind of a beginning lactation certification, and then on to become an IBCLC. And
Okay.
now I'm nursing my third child. I have a 9-month-old son, and I'm not
Oh
sure
my
if you
God, I
know
didn't know you
that.
had a third. That's amazing.
Yeah, so
Congratulations.
thank you so much.
So, what is the difference between those certifications, real quick, just before you move on in your journey?
Sure. So a CLC was a week-long course that I took here locally down in the Cape in Massachusetts, and you sit for 8 hours per day, and at the end there's an exam. And if you pass that, you become a CLC. So it's really wonderful. Can help a lot of different moms.
Okay.
Now, IBCLC is the international standard. It's 1,000 hours
Okay.
of direct care, along with lots of education and a pretty challenging, 3-hour test that's
Okay.
has to be renewed every so often. The
Okay.
first one does that every 3 years, and this one it's really recognized internationally as kind of the gold standard for lactation care.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
So, you have a 9-month-old son now that you're breastfeeding, also. Okay.
Yes,
So,
everyone's been unique, I'll tell you that. Each
okay.
journey, each
Isn't
baby
it
is a
funny
little
how
bit
it's like
different.
that? That's
Mhm.
crazy. So, do you work full time or how are you balancing 3 kids and your certifications?
So I am mostly a stay-at-home mom, and I do the lactation piece on kind of a per diem basis. So a
Hmm.
couple hours a week to even sometimes it's a couple hours a month. That was the beauty of the flexibility of it. While I was pregnant and he was a newborn, I could kind of do I took a maternity leave for 6 months,
Okay.
really, and then I just started up with a couple hours here and there, mostly doing that monthly breastfeeding support group, which we talked about, and
Yeah.
emailing with those type of families.
Yeah, that's great. I know it's nice to have that flexibility, huh? Especially with three little ones, I'm sure. Now you said all three children were so different. So like can you explain that a little bit more? Like what were the challenges with each one and how did you go about it?
I think that that is such an important piece, I think, just even for all moms to know, right? So,
Mhm.
whatever lactation advice is out there in the world, it has to be individualized, not only
Yeah.
to each mom, each baby. It could be the physical piece. If there's any medical piece, then there's the, is the person going back to work?
Mhm.
So many pieces, even just in the diet, the mom and baby that go into it, let alone the above culture that plays into it and
Right.
the knowledge and the supports, sometimes yes or sometimes no, so there's so many pieces there. For me, I think that the first with my first, it was just new. It's your
Yeah.
first baby trying to
Yeah.
breastfeed, and it's like something neither of you really are expert at yet,
Yeah.
especially the mama. It's like you're that time period to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure out the latch. How often do you nurse? Not knowing that in the early stages, there's nursing like sometimes every hour, round the clock,
Right.
up all night, like these things
Yeah.
that people don't speak of that frequently or aren't as known, that maybe there might be some discomfort and
Mhm.
all these pieces that people are trying to navigate, plus the weight gain piece. So now you're trying to go to the doctor and you're worrying about, are we,
Yeah.
how are we moving along here? And visitors want to come.
Yeah.
And that can interrupt, oh, the baby's showing hunger signs, but the aunt wants to hold the baby. And you're like, oh no, I have to feed the baby. And then now that causes the problems, those type of
Right.
things. But
Right.
in our culture, we don't do what other cultures do, which can be, take the 40 plus days just mom and baby.
Right.
So a lot of the issues tend to be for new moms, just in general, the information or lack thereof of how many things directly impact breastfeeding that have
Mhm.
nothing to do with milk or milk supply or the mom or the baby. There's a
Right.
lot there too,
Yeah.
but there's bigger things. So
Yeah.
that was the issue. Those were the concerns. And the second one, my daughter had to have surgery, so she wasn't able to breastfeed at all
Yeah.
for a couple of weeks. They wouldn't let her. She would
Okay.
have probably, but they had to go through and literally repair her intestine. And
Wow.
then when we started out breastfeeding, I had to give her like a drop at a time because we wanted to make sure she was healing. And
Right.
then they wouldn't let me even try to breastfeed until she was about a month old. And then it took a month for her to figure out back, what is this? What is breastfeeding? I'm confused. I had
Right.
a little syringe, I had a little bottle. So trying to manage the
Wow.
pumping around the clock every
So
3 hours.
I was gonna say, so you pumped through this whole time?
Yes, every 3 hours
Wow.
without a fail, day and night, I was pumping, because if
Wow.
you can keep your milk supply, you can breastfeed as a mom.
Yeah.
Then you've done
Yeah.
your part,
Yeah.
keep your milk
Yeah, I
supply.
mean, I've heard of some moms pumping through the whole entire, first year, for
Oh,
some reason if the child could not latch. But yeah, that I mean, that is so difficult. So God, I have so much respect for you. That is amazing. And she did. It's a she, your daughter, right? Is that what you
yes,
said?
yes, mhm.
She did end up latching and being able to nurse.
Yes, so
Wow.
she's 4 now, and the biggest piece for that was doing a lot of having her right here,
Okay.
always right here kind of on me, so that if she kind of like moved her finger a little or like showed like she was waking up a little, I would just kind of give her a chance to try.
Yeah.
But there were days where I said, I don't think we're going to be able to do this. The
Yeah.
pumping, and I'm so tired. And I had a lactation consultant and everything that goes into pumping, which is a labor of love. And pumping moms deserve all the credit for that,
Yes.
because it can be so time consuming. The
Hmm.
benefits are wonderful, but it really can be such a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, that's incredible. And you had another little one too at the time. How old was your older daughter when your second daughter was born?
So she was just 2,
Wow.
just 2 weeks prior, but it was actually helpful because she was still nursing.
Okay.
So she kind of helped probably my supply, but
Yeah.
also I feel like we did do a tandem nursing, so she was probably able to they almost connected in that way. Like, I'm like, she helped little sister out. But,
That's so cute. Yeah, like
it did
she
help.
observed it and helped her learn. Oh, that's
Yeah.
incredible. They must be so close because they're so close in age
Oh,
too.
they are so close. Oh
That's
my
awesome.
goodness.
Oh, I
Their
love
love for
that.
each other. Oh my goodness.
Oh. Now, so with your second daughter and her health issues and stuff, so did they resolve? And like, do you think the breastfeeding helped her heal?
I do. So yes, the surgery happened at 3 days old, and she completely healed wonderfully. I do believe that the breast milk has helped in so many different ways for her, and breastfeeding for her immunity. We know that the active breastfeeding actually helps shape the oral palate. So
Mm,
it can help with speech and kind of muscle exercises. There's a lot, it helps prevent ear infections. There's a lot of things that she could have been maybe at more risk for medically that helped
okay.
heal it. Also, constipation and reflux. I wouldn't
Mm,
want that for her, especially after having a GI surgery.
right.
And so I
Right.
think that that was helpful for it as well. But we certainly went through a lot of, we had to add some fortification, add a little formula to it because she wasn't gaining as much weight. You
Okay.
name it, we went through it.
Wow. So she is the one that ultimately brought you to creating this support group.
Yes, exactly. I was
Okay.
connected with another mother who wrote a book called Breastfeeding and Down Syndrome, lives locally to me, and
Oh, wow.
her and I kind of worked it out and decided that why don't we help other moms? And with the 2020 pandemic and so many things being, virtual and on Zoom, we were able to reach a wide amount of people.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, how do you think it was different, like for your second daughter with Down syndrome compared to, breastfeeding your first daughter? Like, why the support group for breastfeeding with Down syndrome? I guess is my question
Sure, that's a great question.
specifically.
Excellent. With my first daughter, I went to the breastfeeding support group here locally, and that
Mm,
was key. And I would highly recommend that to anybody that can if they're having any sort of struggle, because that can be a free resource of really
yeah.
helpful people. And you know, down the line there wasn't a breastfeeding support group for babies with Down syndrome. And when I
Mm,
connected with this other mother I knew, she had talked about how much she wished that that was there when her baby was a newborn. Because of some of the unique
right.
circumstances,
Mhm.
there can be sometimes, so again, every baby's unique, but there can be some sleepiness. Sometimes babies have cardiac issues and need a giant surgery when they're 6 months old. So
Okay.
there really was nothing out there specialized in this. And
Mhm.
there are a lot of unique things that really kind of take some expert help to help overcome. And we have a wonderful co-host, Jill Rabin, and she is also an IBCLC, and she's been doing this for almost 40 years, and she
Wow.
helps so many of the different moms on the group.
Okay. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I love that you took like the need and just like took action and made it happen because I mean, I think that's just so huge for moms, all over the place, no matter what someone is going through. When you find something that's not there and not helpful, because I mean, I felt pretty alone in my breastfeeding journey, even though there were support groups and stuff. I don't know why I was afraid to ask for help, but I really struggled. My pediatrician actually helped me a lot. But anyway, just like getting back to that need, you took that need, you knew you needed it for your daughter too, and someone else needed it too. And now you're helping people probably all over the United States, right?
We get people from all over. We've had a couple international people. It just really worked well because it's something I'm interested in, and my kind of career could move kind of in that direction, being
Yeah.
really flexible as a mom with a few hours and having kind of this unique experience that hopefully I'd like to hope we can help other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you saw your daughter thrive too.
Oh my
She went
goodness.
through a crazy surgery. I mean, I can't even imagine a small child like that going through a surgery and then having to pump and do all that through that. So just be able to share that experience with other people and help them know they're not alone. That's amazing. I'm
We get
really
some experienced moms on the group too. Some come to the group and also share they went through this surgery, and so it
yeah.
helps the other new moms too. I'm not the only one. There are a lot of people out there that share on different Facebook support groups that even come to our group because, like I said, each one's unique. And
Yeah.
sometimes we can find people that live locally or have a similar medical situation and they can connect.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's why I started this podcast too. It's really just like getting each and every mom's like unique story out there, because I feel like even if we're all going through kind of the same things, we all go through labor, we all go through childbirth and all these things, but it's all different, right? For each and every person, everyone's journey is like a little bit different. So if you just share it and, put it out there and moms know they're not alone, it's just really, really encouraging. And I love that. That's
It's
great.
incredible that you're doing this.
Oh, thank
So
you.
wonderful.
So your son, so what happened with your son?
So he was born full term, 40 weeks in a day, and completely 100% natural, not a single intervention, not a single medication. So as soon as he was born, he, right here on my chest, I was able to kind of pull him up here, and he did the instinctive breast crawl, latched on and nursed, and it was just took off without a problem. I would say that he almost, I was thinking, he was gaining very quickly compared to my other kids because it was just so easy for him, so it was a totally different thing where I was thinking, oh, I don't even need to offer this as much because he's very efficient. He can really nurse so quickly.
Right.
So he did really wonderful that way. And different things. I've heard people talk about their babies like biting when they get teeth or something. And my first never did that. And I experienced that this time.
Yeah, my daughter did that when she had her teeth. It's like a jolt. Oh my goodness, that's awesome. Well, that's great that he was nice and easy, especially after all you went through, with your second child too. I mean, what do you think is the best thing to do like immediately after childbirth, like right on the chest? Like what would you advise women to do?
So one of the key points of breastfeeding is what's called the golden hour. Okay. So immediately after birth, babies go through these stages of alertness and looking around, and they use their 5 senses, and literally what they have for vision, they can see what they're looking for. They use smell, mostly smell, and they instinctively can crawl over and latch on if left uninterrupted. Okay. So one of the big pieces that I really want to share today is that I would say many of the breastfeeding issues come from that being interrupted or other things during birth in the early period being over intervened upon or interrupted that end up making breastfeeding more difficult than it probably needed to be. We have to know that when a mom's in labor, that medications are going to affect breastfeeding. If you can avoid certain things, of course, if you need it, that's fine too. 100%, totally fine. I had an epidural and some back labor with my first child. I'm not, you do what you need to do. But I think people need to be informed that these decisions will impact breastfeeding. If you have a C-section or a surgical birth, that will directly impact that golden hour. Right. And plus several other physiological things that occur during birth. Mm-hmm. But many babies that are born by C-section breastfeed perfectly fine. It might just be a little bit different of a journey as far as in the beginning, and how those can contribute to different things. So the biggest piece right after is an uninterrupted mom and baby time. That other stuff can wait. And honestly, the longer you can just do that, the better. Okay.
So you're saying like wait for the bath, wait for all that stuff, just like leave the baby right here. That's it. Okay.
They're saying now the bath should be like several days after, at least 24 hours plus. Try to avoid, I've even read like the warmth of mom to baby is really important. So try to keep that, like don't have them all swaddled up in next to you like that. They need to be able to be with you kind of, because at that point you're still, yes, the baby's now born, but that 4th trimester, mom and baby are really still a unit.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So even like what's the golden, like, so it's an hour long, you're saying golden hour, like around there. So around 60 minutes. Okay. All right.
They say they call it the golden hour. There's a lot of wonderful information out there specifically on preserving that and the research behind how well that can affect breastfeeding kind of in the short and long term.
Mm. Do you think that, so like latch, right? So the baby has to learn how to latch. So you said your son, latched immediately. Do you think because he was your 3rd, you were a little bit more relaxed about it, or does that have anything to do with it, or you think so? So
there are so many factors that it's so hard to tease out, but yes, I feel like at this point I was feeling like there was no question in my mind that we're going to be fine with this because of experience. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, because
So
it's
that's a
so
good
hard
factor.
as a new mom. Yeah. Because, like, how do you know what is a right latch and what is not a right latch? I think that's really hard to know, especially at first when they're not really, like, they're not efficient anyway, immediately, obviously. But, like, they're also, their tummies are so small. So it's like they're not going to eat a ton. How do you know if it's right or not?
What is the best advice that I can give on this? From both a lactation consultant and a mom's standpoint, I would say it is kind of following the baby's lead. And yes, that point about staying relaxed and remembering that this is something that involves like hormones being produced in your brain and the
Mm,
five senses and the closeness.
okay.
And as far as the latch, giving them the time and the space to try to figure it out while
Mm,
also having support people in place. You can look pictures up as far as latch.
mm.
I actually, with my first daughter, went and had latch problems, and the lactation consultant showed me these diagrams of how you want the latch to be
Okay.
because I was having all of that stuff. It hurt so bad. I was curling my toes in pain,
Mm.
bleeding,
Yeah.
cracking.
Yeah, I was too.
Like, you know that feeling. Is there,
Yeah.
and you're thinking, how can I do this? Then some people will offer a nipple shield, which has its pros and cons as well.
Yep.
So it depends on the person. I didn't end up using it. I kind of, my mother said to me, just keep nursing, just keep nursing. This idea of keep at it, keep giving them the chance. And because she had the experience, and I know not all mothers and grandparents or
Right.
anybody may have somebody around them that can do that. But as far as the latches, yes, trying to stay relaxed. And a lot of times it takes a little bit more time. But again, we have to remember the factors that come before that that can affect the latch.
Yep.
And I think
Yep.
that that's a piece that often gets overlooked. And if we can prevent that, or we can set you up for success, and if it doesn't happen, then we have to give a little bit more time. And there's a couple different little strategies that could be tried if we're really having a tough time getting the latch. But as the baby gets
Right.
a little bit stronger, you get a little bit more comfortable. Having somebody there to say, you're doing a great job. Sometimes
Yeah.
that's all you need, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of pressure, right? You're like worried they're not getting enough food. I mean, you are bleeding, you are in pain, but it's like, how can I not feed my child? I did find the nipple shield helped. A consultant did come to my house. I think it was like 2 or 3 days after the baby was born. And I was like engorged. Like I didn't pump or anything right away. Like, do you recommend that, Rachel? Like pumping if like, because the baby's not taking a lot of milk, right? So like then my milk came in and it was like, bam, you know? So like, what is your advice with that? Like, I didn't know what to do with my first baby.
You're reminding me of all of these pieces. There are so many pieces, and you can bring yourself right back to that,
Yeah,
right?
I can
And
feel
those days
it.
where it's like, there's so much going on. There's
Yeah.
such a big, big change. And as far as the pumping piece, I'm in the idea of not pumping for the first, as long as you can, if you
Okay.
don't need to.
Okay.
Because ideally, you want mom and baby to sync up because it's supply and demand. So if the baby's removing milk, that's what stimulates your brain to make more milk.
Yep.
So if you add the pumping in, sometimes it's another factor that can get a little bit confusing.
Okay.
And we have to remember that when babies are first born, they're just nursing. There's not much coming out at all. They're nursing to start the process, and they're getting little drips of that colostrum,
Hmm.
which is liquid gold, they call it, filled with
Yeah.
all of the things the baby needs to coat their digestive systems to set them
Right.
up for a lifetime of health. So they're not getting very much in the beginning, little bit more, more, more.
Right.
And when I was pumping with my second daughter there, you could literally see the color changes from the
Yeah.
colostrum to
Yeah.
the in-between milk to now the real, what we think of as milk, the mature milk that comes
Right.
in. So
Right.
ideally pumping, it's dependent on so many factors.
Okay.
If the baby can't remove the milk because they really are having a tough latch or they don't know how, you might need to keep your milk supply going.
Okay.
And that's where you'd have to look at, if you needed to give a bottle, trying to do so in a way that won't create a bottle preference or more issues.
Right.
So the best bet is to try to just sync up, try to get over those little humps
Yeah.
while maintaining, watching the weight, watching the baby, watching the P's and poos, those very
Yeah.
big things, but trying to sync up because your body, unless of course there's other medical issues, sometimes people
Right.
don't find that out till later,
Yep.
they can usually sync up.
Yeah. Now, I mean, most common medical issues, you're talking like chin or not chin, cheek or lip tie or tongue tie, like those type of things.
Sure, those can certainly impact breastfeeding from the baby's point of view. It's funny, I had a mom friend who didn't get her baby severe tongue tie fixed until the baby was almost 9 months old. And she was like, I was going to breastfeed no matter what. And she had like an abundant supply and it still worked all
Okay.
okay. So
Yeah.
again, there's multiple factors. Other people might have a tongue tie so bad that they cannot remove the milk and they would have to get
Right.
that evaluated and
Right.
fixed right away. Now, the mom's issues could be if they had been on some medication, if there was some
Yeah.
thyroid thing, if you know any sort of if there was a retained placenta. There's so many different
Mm,
pieces that could possibly affect milk supply, but
yeah.
generally, that's very tiny percentage of the population can't produce enough milk. Most can. The
Mm,
problems are created by other things that get in the way, unfortunately.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it did affect my milk supply a little bit because by the time she figured out how to latch, I was then engorged, and which made it harder for her to latch because I was so engorged. So I did think it affected my supply. She wasn't gaining weight enough. So I ended up having to feed her on demand and pump, morning and night when she was like still asleep. It was like endless. I mean, after hearing your story though, I really shouldn't complain.
Oh, no, it's fine. It
but
is. It's so hard.
oh my god, it was so exhausting. I was getting zero sleep, and then I would like have to pump after I put her to sleep before she woke up 2 hours later. It was just crazy, but it did get easier. I will say that. Like once my supply got up there and she got more efficient, and the bloody nipples and all that went away. It was pretty easy from there, and I was able to nurse her, past over a year old and stuff. So I feel blessed that I was able to do that. And I almost quit. It's hard, right? And
That's
that's
amazing.
why.
Thank you for sharing that. That is great. You got over that hump and it was
Oh
hard
yeah.
and wow,
Yeah.
thank
Well,
you.
that's
So
why I really
cool.
wanted to have you come on here. And even, I mean, if other lactation consultant want to come on here too, that's great. Because I think it is such a hard thing for moms. And I do think we get so exhausted, and just overwhelmed that a lot of people don't make it over those humps. So just being able to talk about it and, even hear your story that you made it through those crazy obstacles, Rachel, to pump for that long, and your daughter thrived off of it. Just to be able to tell that and just say there's hope, right? You can get over this hurdle. It does get easier, right? It
That is
does.
the piece, and you're sharing that piece too. And that is the number one factor. The research sets it up. The mother's determination, the hope, and this is what we're doing, trying to spread the information and also just what you did. You explained how the truth of it was really difficult at points.
Mm-hmm.
You did some things that kind of were new to you and kept persevering, and look what happened over a year. That is incredible.
Yeah. Well, and I really think lactation consultants are getting more and more popular now, which I think is just incredible because I didn't know one, when after I had my daughter. There was like an aide or something that came by, like I said, from the hospital to check on me after. But I just think it's great to have that resource, even if you have to, pay for it and support it. It is worth it, 100% worth it to get your own lactation consultant to help you through this. Because like I said, my pediatrician actually was the one that kind of sat me down and was like, talked me through it. She had 3 kids and was like, you're going to have to pump, here and there, my pediatrician. And she was
Wow.
amazing. And I literally thank her and bless her so much for helping me because I didn't have anybody else to do that for me. And I'm so glad that she was there for me during that. But now that my daughter's almost 8. So this was about 8 years ago. So now that we have, more of these resources open and so many more people are becoming lactation consultants, I just think it's get one now. If you're thinking about breastfeeding, yeah, find one now. Use Rachel, use whoever, find one that fits with your needs and your style and whatever. And yes, it
And
is.
if you could set that up ahead of time, take a breastfeeding
Yes.
course,
Yes.
find out who's near you locally, find out if there's a free breastfeeding support group, find the lactation consultant, see what your insurance might cover.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a big point that you just made about the pediatrician. And I am so happy you made that point because that is so key. And I'm so happy for you that you had a wonderfully supportive
Yeah.
pediatrician. Not all pediatricians know much about the lactation piece in breastfeeding. Of course, they know what they need to do to be a doctor, but I'm saying the
Right.
intricacies, they know it, but they might not have as much time, should I say,
Hmm.
to support moms through that. And that's where the
Exactly.
lactation piece comes in. And so as part of our mission, we're actually looking to help kind of teach doctors how to support moms in that as well, the
Hmm.
ones that are interested in it. But having a pediatrician that has your back, having the support group is so key. It really is. And I wish
Yeah.
there was a way that we could streamline lactation so that it could be lactation consultants get paid and then moms could pay based on how much money or income they could pay, because sometimes those factors are so big, right? The
Yeah.
financial.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a way. Like, a friend of mine has a company where, it's a nonprofit, but she supports lower income families that have unexpected pregnancies. So I mean, you could start like a nonprofit or something like that that could offer those services where it's like you pay for your income, like where your income's at. Yeah, that would be incredible. I mean, like you said, there are support groups that people can reach out to that are free, but even just having that one-on-one talk with someone, it's just, especially when you're in that mindset postpartum where everything is new, everything is overwhelming, you don't know what you're doing, to have that, friend and kind of mentor to help you through that time is huge. And I think the statistics would change so much on breastfeeding that people would stick with it much longer because, like I said, like once you get over that hump, it's really so simple and just so natural. My daughter has never had any stomach issues, nothing like that, and she really has thrived. Once we got the hang of it. Once we got the hang of it. Yeah, yeah, and I
Yes.
mean, you hear crazy stories about breastfeeding all the time. I mean, what are some of the best advice that you could give to moms out there to kind of expect if they want to breastfeed?
Sure. I think I'm going to touch back on this last piece about the lactation consultant being the support system. And
Hmm.
honestly, I feel like it's as much the kind of technical help that they can with latch and weights as it is like having a caring, supportive,
Hmm.
often woman person with you who's on your team, who's going to help you navigate. This is the weight gain, and you have to try again when the baby shows a hunger cue. This is a hunger cue. This
Hmm.
is, if you're up 2 hour every 2 hours at night, that's normal.
Hmm.
Somebody that's there with you, that is supporting you, is so big, and that's what I hope we can kind of come back to. And I agree that would change the statistics on things
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah,
That really would.
absolutely. For sure. I mean, if it wasn't for my husband, I mean, at like 2 months, she wasn't gaining the weight she was supposed to. I just talked to my pediatrician and I was like, I'm gonna have to pump and do this. And I was like, oh, I just want to quit. And he was like, just stick with it a little bit longer. Like, I think it's gonna be okay. And if he hadn't said that, I probably would have gone out and bought formula like that day. Not that there's anything wrong with formula, but just like that was my mindset at that time. I just like wanted to give up. But I think if you're surrounded by someone that is gonna, support you, he knew it was what I wanted to do. I was just so exhausted and, depleted at that point. So yeah, I think like having that support, no matter who it is, whether it's a lactation consultant, your partner, or, a family member or something,
That is so, I
would
love that
make
your
all the
husband is
difference.
helpful. That's
Yeah.
another big piece, having a supportive person. And I also have a similar situation where we were at a crossroads where it was like, am I going to add in another bottle or am I going to try? And my husband did a very similar thing. This is funny that this is parallel. He said, "You guys, why don't you go for it?" There's
Yeah.
something very like, and when it comes from your husband or your partner, it's like, wow, right?
Yeah.
That big piece. So that would be something I would suggest to people. Maybe have their partners, their husbands look up what the benefits of breastfeeding are. And
Yeah.
maybe how could they be supportive? Here, would you like a nice
Yeah.
like a cup of water? Do you want me to, can I get you a snack? Are you comfortable? However that
Absolutely.
they can be helpful makes a big difference. I
Yeah.
also want to touch on the formula piece. There are instances where some people need to give formula, and that's completely understandable. I think the piece that I like people to know is that sometimes if you start giving a bottle of formula and you're not pumping, then that can cause the supply issue that didn't exist. So then people will
Yeah.
come later and say, well, I didn't have enough milk supply. Well,
Hmm.
you probably did, but you didn't think you did. So then you gave the formula, and now the baby's full. Now your breast's not getting stimulated to make more milk, and you just created a problem that didn't exist. So I think that's one of the number one misconceptions out there.
Yeah,
that
they don't have
that
enough
if
milk.
people knew, they
Yeah,
think they don't, but maybe they did, and then now they don't because they made a
yeah,
decision kind of that they didn't realize the implications of, but it's an understandable decision when you don't have the education or support or whatever else it is that you
absolutely.
needed at.
Right, because I mean, you need to feed your child, and I understand that, but I do hear that a lot. That like, oh, I didn't produce enough milk, and I mean, I was that person, right? I didn't produce enough milk, or like I didn't do it right off the bat. But I mean, I will say, like you said, you can change these, right? Because it's supply and demand. So if your baby is going to continue to eat from your breast, you're going to start producing more milk, or if you're pumping in between, you're going to start producing more milk. So you can change it.
Oftentimes you can,
Right.
yes.
Right. So it's not permanent. And like you said, those statistics are low, right? That people don't produce enough milk. That's not
Being just an issue of somebody that physiologically couldn't produce enough milk is very low in proportion to how often you kind of hear that, or it becomes something people perceive.
okay. All right, gotcha. So what do you so nutrition wise, like while you're breastfeeding right off the bat, like postpartum, what do you suggest?
I know, I believe the nutrition piece also can vary, right? Depending on who you're talking to, all of these things can. It's very important to have a well balanced diet
Mm-hmm.
and eat. I think your body, if you listen to your body a lot, it'll tell you what you need, right?
Yeah.
So I think there can be a misconception that you need tons and tons and tons and tons of extra
Right.
stuff.
Right.
I think that the calorie requirements can vary, but I've heard something like 500 extra calories or
Yeah, I think I
something.
heard that too, like 400 to 600 or something like that. Yeah.
You're getting a little bit extra, and it's not going wild one way or the other. Of course, with the sleep piece and juggling all the things we've talked about, some moms might not remember that they need to take in X
Yeah.
amount. So
Yeah.
that's where the support piece comes. And just your body really will tell you, and try to keep those nice, healthy meals. If you can choose the really healthy types of foods that will sustain you. And of course, we know sometimes you'll want to have some snack that's not, the
Yeah.
healthiest option. But the point is really trying to be mindful of getting what your body needs, because your body is expending energy to make this milk to
Exactly.
then feed another being, right? So
Right.
another baby.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And drinking a lot of water, I assume, right? Because you're creating fluid. So I assume you're calling. I remember being thirsty all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
Certainly, definitely. Always had the big jug of ice water right by the
Right.
bedside in the hospital. And then when you go home, keep doing that.
Right.
Sometimes they send you home with one, right? So keep that one.
Yeah. I just used to put cups all over the house because I would just all of a sudden just be so thirsty. I'm like, I need water now.
That is
Yeah,
a
but I mean,
great
I work
idea.
with postpartum women as a health coach, and I mean, I always just say, like, listen to your body because I mean, you can say a number of calories, but if you're not hungry, you're not hungry, and if you're hungry, you're hungry. Like, you're not going to go off of what someone told you to eat if you're hungry, So your body, like you said, is going to tell you what you need, and try to make those to be like healthy, nutrient dense choices to support the baby and yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So I'm trying to think what else I have for you, Rachel. Now you were a pumping mom, so did you feel like this affected your supply while your daughter was recovering from her surgery?
Pumping?
Yeah, like can you pump through the whole first year of life? Like, I mean, I hear people doing it. Is it possible?
Yes, some people do it even longer than a whole year.
Yeah.
Now the wearable pumps I hear are very helpful for
Yes,
people.
seen that.
So that's a nice step in a positive direction. Somebody gave me a car charging thing one time to help,
Yes.
like if you're going to medical appointments, because that's
Yeah.
another thing to try to juggle. Even if there's no medical issues, you have to go to a pediatrician's appointment or whatever.
Right.
That can be that, because you don't want to miss the pump. So the key to
Right.
pumping is you have to do it every 3 hours or every 2 to 3 hours, 8 to 12 times a day. Again, this is at the beginning.
Yep.
It can depend as the baby gets a little bit older. So the biggest piece with pumping, it's wonderful to provide breast milk that way. I think people going into it might say, "Oh, I'll just pump," because it's easier. Of course, if you want to pump because you don't want to directly breastfeed, that's one thing,
Mm,
and we support whatever it is that is most comfortable for you.
yeah.
If you go into pumping thinking, oh, this will be something that is kind of maybe easier than nursing, I think it's
Mhm.
important to note that pumping around the clock can be a big commitment. Again, sometimes you'll have to wake up at night. It's not the exact same milk output that you would get if you were directly breastfeeding for the
Okay.
most part. Why? Because breastfeeding is a five senses situation. You smelling the baby, you're seeing the
Mm,
baby. Sometimes they even kind of do a little thing where they can knead a little bit and help the milk flow come down.
yeah.
The way that they remove the milk, if it's a healthy full term baby that's doing a wonderful job, not like a kind of an early baby with a poor latch. Again, everything's variable. Usually they can pull out more milk than kind of the pump
Okay.
can, but some
Yeah.
women respond wonderfully to a pump and some not
Yeah.
so much. Hand
Okay.
expression is another thing that helps mom, especially in the beginning. If you have
Yeah.
colostrum, it's real thick and sticky. Sometimes you have to actually do a hand expression. Lots of videos are helpful in that
Okay.
because the pump kind of can't do the same that way. So again, all pretty variable.
Mm,
It can be a little bit more challenging to maintain
yeah.
over the long period of time. So if you want to breastfeed, if you can do that kind of might save it's easier, right? On the go, like you
Right.
said. Once you got established, it's
Yeah,
like I
exactly.
can go to this barbecue. I can bring my baby. It's ready to the right
Right, you don't
temperature.
have to pack anything. Yeah, exactly. And I'm also thinking like of moms going back to work too. So that's why my point in pumping, I'm like, how because I hated the pumping, at work. It's so much easier just to feed your baby and then that's it. But in realistic terms, we most of us go back to work. Do you have a pump that you like that you could recommend? Or what's your favorite?
So specifically, I think the only piece I would say on the pumps is that some people like a medical grade
Hmm.
pump if there's some issues with milk supply in the beginning.
Okay.
So I don't like to give any kind of certain specific brands, but there's several different hospital grade pumps that you can often rent from your insurance company if you
Okay.
needed that.
Okay.
And then the major names for pumping, just to have a regular pump, a lot of insurance cover those,
Mm,
should be fine if you're doing something like you said. You were home on your maternity leave for X amount of weeks,
yeah.
breastfeeding is going well. Now you have to go to
Go
work
back to
and you
work.
need to pump while you work. And I did that too
Okay.
with my first. Yeah, I went back to work after X amount of months. And the key with that is getting the time to pump at work. And I
Yeah.
know some people, I've heard a lot of teachers, they'll be like, I can only get one pump.
Right.
And then, so
Right.
maybe as soon as you pick up the baby, you nurse them then, and you nurse them before, and you nurse them at
Yeah.
night.
Yeah.
And there's so many moving pieces with that. But if you can try to pump at
Yeah.
the intervals needed, that's what will help your
Okay.
milk.
Yeah. It's definitely it's hard, it's especially if you don't have like a set schedule every single day at your job. So I mean, I feel like a lot of workplaces though are getting much more supportive of breastfeeding, whether they have a room for someone to go pump. I did not have that. I mean, I was all over the place just trying to find a spot, just to pump real quick. But it is doable, I think. I was just curious if there's like a special pump, and I have seen the hands free pumps now, and like they're battery operated. Like it's insane. They're just walking around with a pump. I was like, why did I not have this? This is crazy. This would have been amazing. So yeah, it has come a long way. So whoever is looking to breastfeed, you guys are in for a treat. It's gonna be hard, but there's a lot of stuff that has come along that is very, very helpful.
I agree.
So where do you see your support group, 5 to 10 years from now, Rachel?
Oh, that is a great question. I say we're still doing our monthly support group and continuing to reach more people. We find people all the time that come to the group and come back later and say, I just needed some place to come to talk about what was going on. And sometimes these moms are coming, yes, for a breastfeeding question, but also because they're just like, we're in the NICU and I didn't know this was going to happen and I'm so
Yeah.
tired. And this is the piece that impacts it all, right? It's the stress, it's the sleep, it's the needing
Yeah.
somebody to like hold new mothers as they're holding their baby,
Yeah.
right? So these support groups, whether we continue to even open it up, so we've talked about this, opening it up to all NICU moms, anybody with
Yeah.
any medical we really want to help everybody, but the point of keeping it specialized was to make sure that we got the information to the people that kind of might not have had it. So we've talked
Yeah.
about different avenues like that.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I like that it's specialized too, because I feel like sometimes it's hard to find a support group that fits your need, when yours is so specialized that's just so easy to find. I'm sure so many people join it just for that specialized niche, for sure.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
as I said, my co-host has been doing this specifically for like 40 years. So you
Amazing.
could come to her with a question and she will be like, I know somebody in this place and I know this one can do it. And I'm learning something new every single day
Yeah.
because there's a lot that can be involved in these things.
Yeah, that's going to be you. Do you
But
think
it's
you'll work more hours like as your kids get older? Will you add on hours? Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about that. I started my little, social media pages, but honestly, at this point in my life, I am not. I only do it very, very infrequently. And as my kids get older, I'm hoping to kind of grow that into a business. When
Yeah.
they are busier doing things, and the career can kind of come back into the forefront. But right
Right.
now, I'm doing the mom of three kids thing, but also able to help kind of some hours throughout the month.
Yeah. I love that because you're doing your passion, but you're also doing your purpose and passion at home as well with your kids. So you get to do a little bit of both, and you'll always have that, as they get older and like you said, are doing other things. Like, great. And I guess
Yeah.
that's my next question too. Like, where can we find you? Where can we find your support group on the internet? If you have a website or Instagram.
So
Oh,
I'm
go
sure.
ahead. Go ahead.
My Instagram is naturally DS breastfeeding,
Okay.
and also Julia's Way. So they're kind of the bigger piece, and I work with them as far as the monthly support groups. But if somebody Googles Julia's Way,
Okay.
you'll find beautiful videos and this wonderful book, and I'm kind of a part of that. And then I have my own page, the Naturally DS Breastfeeding, and Seaside Lactation is kind of a local business. But again, I haven't taken that off the ground right now because I'm focusing on being a mom
Yeah.
right now, but there will be more to come. And I thought
Right.
coming on today with this podcast, I could share some of the things that I've learned and see kind of where
Absolutely. Yeah, this was incredible. I mean, I know it will help so many people. I'm going to link all of those below so people can find you. And you do the monthly support group now, right? Even with the 3 kids? Okay, so you'll
Yes,
be
so
there if people join there.
I'll always be there. It's every first Thursday of the month at 7:30 p.m. So it's a little bit after bedtime. So
Okay. All right. Perfect. So
so
yeah, all
hours
of
to
that will
be
be linked
flexible.
below. All right. Awesome. Well, Rachel, thank you so much. This was seriously so much good information, and I know it's going to help so many moms out there. And anybody looking for a support group for Down syndrome breastfeeding, definitely reach out to Rachel. And you do consulting, lactation consulting
Yes.
sometimes. Okay.
Mhm.
So if you are looking for a lactation consultant, you can reach out to her as well. I really appreciate you being here, and it was so nice to see you.
Thank you so much. I loved hearing what you had to share as well.
Thank
Very helpful.
you.
I'm so glad to have been on here today.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I'll be in touch soon. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Empowerhood is brought to you by Flourish Everyday Coaching. Check them out in the link below. And again, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. If you could take 60 seconds of your time and leave us an Apple review, this helps share the news about this podcast and help women all over the world. If you want to see the video version of this podcast, you can go to our YouTube channel and subscribe there. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next episode.